lovely subscribers. I wanted to do a quick video about my laparoscopy and D&Cs and my experiences with them. My first ever video that I filmed for this channel was about my miscarriages and basically our journey so far. But I do want to go into a bit more detail about the surgeries and again what my experience was. I know with my laparoscopy, which I had in November last year, I struggled to find other people's experiences on YouTube and online before I went into the surgery, and I think it would have helped me to know some things that I didn't know before going in prior. And also I've had quite a number of you subscribe since my first ever video, and I thought this would be a good way of bringing you all up to speed on what our journey has entailed so far. So I'll kind of start at the beginning so it makes sense as to why I had the laparoscopy. So in May of 2014 we decided to start trying. In our third month of trying we conceived naturally. We found out on Tim's birthday. It was such a beautiful celebration. We were celebrating Tim as well as this new life we had growing. So it was amazing. We had a scan at 7 weeks and we saw a beautiful heartbeat, 130 beats per minute. We were over the moon. And then I was 9 weeks, 4 days, close to 10 weeks. We had another ultrasound with my OB. He did an external ultrasound on my stomach and I could see the baby. It looked like much bigger than my first ultrasound. It had grown a lot, but I couldn't see the flickering heartbeat, and I looked at the screen and my heart sank. I looked at my OB's face and he was just not giving anything away, but I could tell he was moving it around. He said, "Let's do an internal ultrasound." And again, he was moving it around. Couldn't see it, and I just could not believe it. Tim and I both just felt like we were hit by a truck. We didn't see it coming. Miscarriage wasn't on our radar whatsoever. I don't know why, but we just weren't prepared for that news. We just assumed that everything would be fine. And this was a Friday, so my D&C had to be booked for the Monday. So he was explaining the procedure and what I'd needed to do, and I was just trying so hard to hold back the tears. And there was a student doctor in on that visit, which wasn't ideal. When we left the room, he had this big grin on his face and it was just so inappropriate. But anyway, we got in the car and just both of us just were beside ourselves. We just were in shock and just devastated. And that weekend was really tough. Just knowing that my baby, for those 2 days over the weekend, was inside of me but no longer alive was just absolutely heartbreaking. I had to go to the chemist to get some antihistamines for my hay fever, which I was told by my OB was perfectly safe to take. So I was at the chemist on the Saturday or the Sunday, and I had the lady at the chemist ask me if I was pregnant, and I had to say no, even though I was, but I knew that, it was just, that broke me. That really broke me. So the D&C was at 1:30 on the Monday, the 13th of October 2014. On our way to the hospital, we had to go past our doctor's office to collect the tablets that I had to take an hour prior to the D&C to encourage my uterus to contract and get the miscarriage happening, because it was a missed miscarriage. I forgot to mention, on the ultrasound, the baby was measuring 8 weeks, 4 days, but I should have been 9 weeks, 4 days. So that's classified as a missed miscarriage when your body doesn't recognise that you've had a miscarriage. So I took those tablets, and of course, because of the anxiety and the, having to have this surgery to take the baby out of me, it was just, I was so emotional and felt sick to my stomach, just the thought of it all. And then taking these tablets on top of that, my uterus began cramping. It was like really awful period pain. When I got to the hospital, we were in the waiting room for quite a while, and I was just sitting on my chair, kind of just felt really sick. I felt like I was going to throw up. We were finally called in. I got my blood pressure taken and my heart rate monitored. I think my heart rate was 117 beats per minute, which was quite high. And obviously that was just because of the situation. I was put in a hospital gown and, again, anxiously waiting. Hadn't started bleeding, which was good. I got wheeled in, obviously no makeup, and my earrings were taped. I saw my OB briefly, and then woke up in a hospital bed with Tim by my side, and the anaesthetic made me so groggy I could barely open my eyes for a long time. But I remember, well, Tim told me before my eyes were open, I just had tears streaming down my face. I couldn't open my eyes because the anaesthetic was so strong in my system, but the sadness was intense. Recovery-wise, I wasn't in too much pain. The anaesthetic did make me throw up that time, just the once, and I did feel like I was going to be sick again on our drive home. It's a 40-minute drive home, so it's just as we'd left, and then I just slept the majority of the way home, and that week was just awful. All the months following was just awful, and we were told by my OB that, and a lot of other people, once you've had a miscarriage, you're much more fertile. So I was holding on to that and hoping that would be the case. Each month that went by was just so much disappointment. You know, you've lost a baby, and all I wanted to do is be pregnant again. And so each month that went by and it was a negative pregnancy test was just so we felt defeated. When the 6-month mark came, we had tests done, all came back fine. So that was, I think it was June, July, and then we decided in August that we'd just try on our own up until November. We had the laparoscopy on the 25th of November. Before the surgery on the 25th, we had a pre-op appointment with my OB where he explained the procedure. Basically, they put a camera, Basically, they put a camera through the belly button. So the incisions are through the belly button, the camera goes, and then they do an incision to the side. My doctor said if there were any signs of endometriosis, then I'd have two incisions, one either side of the belly button. Laparoscopy was just a way of checking to see if my tubes were open and if I had any signs of endometriosis. So we arrived at the day procedure centre. I was put in a gown, put in the bed, a long wait before I was wheeled in, put under general anaesthetic, and I always take a long time to wake up. So I remember waking up feeling really groggy, but my OB came over to me while I was in bed, still waking up. I couldn't open my eyes. He said, "Don't worry about opening your eyes, I'll just talk to you and you just listen." He said, "So what we found no signs of endometriosis. However, your left tube has no flow. When he tried to flush the dye through my tube, it's completely blocked. And my right tube has sluggish flow, so it is partially blocked." And he didn't think that the chances of conceiving naturally were very high. So him telling me that news, I was pretty shocked. He said, "Look, just rest for now, and I'll see you, book an appointment for 4 weeks' time, and we'll go through it all then. I thought 4 weeks. Those 4 weeks were the longest 4 weeks ever. I had so many questions, of course. Why had it happened when, I was perfectly healthy before? I had so many questions about the surgery and about the results, and had to wait a month, and it was just such a long time to wait. This is what I received after surgery. Blocked left tube, sluggish right tube, no endometriosis. The writing is, of course, really hard to read. Doctor's writing. Pain relief was Panadol, and he said to expect some light bleeding for a few days, and that the pain should improve daily. I was wheeled into the recovery room once I'd finally gotten myself dressed, and sat with Tim, both quite a bit in shock, and I couldn't help but, cry. Even at that point though, I was still grateful that we had an option, because my OB had said that IVF would be your only option. It could have been a lot worse. There was no endometriosis, so I was very grateful for that. But I think the shock of the news that we couldn't conceive naturally when being a mum was everything I'd ever wanted, was really tough and a lot to take. It took a long time to come to terms with that news. So recovery-wise, before the surgery I was warned about slight shoulder pain that I may get after surgery. I just wish I was told how excruciatingly painful it was going to be. The shoulder pain was the worst. I was really slow to walk out of the hospital. My incisions weren't too bad. Obviously I only had 2 because there was no endometriosis. So I had the one in my belly button, which was had a dressing on it, and it was sealed with a bandage thing, and same as the other incision on I think it was my left. I've got a tiny scar. So they both healed nicely. I didn't wash for the first 24 hours, and I kept the dressing on for a couple of days actually before taking it off. So I didn't get any pain really from that area. It was the shoulder pain. So during the surgery they use a carbon dioxide gas to see inside of you, to make it easier to see inside, and after they try and obviously get as much of it out as they can, but obviously quite a lot of it stays in, and so it rises in your body over time as it's getting absorbed, and it affects your nerves, and so my chest, shoulder area, neck, back, anytime I walked or moved or laughed, sneezed, I get allergies. I'm allergic to dust and the air, and so I had a sneezing fit a couple of days or a day after surgery, and it was just every sneeze I just was howling in pain. That was the worst for me. I've spoken to other people who've had laparoscopies before, and some of them totally agree with me and say that was just way worse than any of the incisions, and others say they didn't have experience that degree of pain. So I think it varies from person to person, but for me that was just horrendous. I heard lying flat can help. There was a night where Tim made me laugh, and the laughing hurt. I was half crying, half laughing, and it was that laughter where it was contagious, so you couldn't stop laughing, but then it was hurting, and so then I was crying, and then it was just, I was a mess. Anyway, that shoulder pain went away. Probably took around 2 weeks for it to completely go away. It took a long time. I was on antibiotics and painkillers, so yeah, it was definitely not a fun experience, and I was not prepared for it whatsoever. So we had our follow-up appointment after the procedure on the 23rd of December, so a couple of days before Christmas. We saw our OB. He explained what he saw and what our options were. So his belief was that I must have got a minor infection after the D&C a year prior, and even the smallest infection can cause the tiny, delicate fallopian tubes a lot of damage. I was asymptomatic. I had no symptoms of an infection after the D&C. He was very positive about us being good candidates for IVF, and we were keen to move forward because we'd waited this whole year following the D&C. We'd been trying to get pregnant unsuccessfully on our own, and we just so badly wanted it to happen. So we had that appointment and were booked in to start IVF in February this year. On my birthday, however, in mid-January, I got a positive pregnancy test, which was a big shock, massive shock. We literally, after the 25th of November, we conceived just after Christmas, a month later. We would have conceived, we worked out, a few days after our follow-up appointment with my OB, where he explained what he'd found. A couple of days after that, we conceived and found out 2 weeks later. So that was just amazing. We considered it our miracle baby, miracle pregnancy. We thought it was meant to be, you know. Against all odds, it happened, and we were over the moon, obviously, but very cautious this time, this pregnancy, because last time miscarriage just wasn't on our radar. This pregnancy this year was very different. I was anxious constantly every day, but tried really hard to stay positive and not let my anxiety take over too much. Our first ultrasound was 6 weeks exactly. We saw a beautiful little heartbeat flickering away. Our next ultrasound was at 7 weeks. Again, a beautiful heartbeat. We heard the heartbeat this time, which he said was very rare for this early. It was usually not detectable, but you know, it was, and it was beating strong, and everything looked good. After that 7-week appointment, the few days following, I went into panic mode because my symptoms, they completely went away, and I panicked. So we went back to see my OB to have that ultrasound at 7 weeks, 4 days, just to ease my mind. And there was still a heartbeat. It was a bit irregular. It wasn't as regular as we'd heard it previously, but my OB said it's nothing to worry about, but come back in a week's time and we'll, you know, just to ease your mind. So I didn't worry too much, but I just, at the time, I did think it was odd. Tim came to every appointment, by the way. He was there by my side. So at 8 weeks, 4 days, I went back. Unfortunately, Tim couldn't make it to the appointment. He was stuck in traffic. He tried really hard to be there, but couldn't make it, and so I was on my own. He put the ultrasound wand inside, and again, no heartbeat, and I just could not believe it. Just see this lifeless little thing with no flickering light. We'd seen the heartbeat so many times with this little one, and to not see it anymore was absolutely devastating. And the phone call I had to make to Tim after the appointment was just the worst. I had to tell him that it's happened again. There's no heartbeat, and he couldn't believe it himself. We both considered this to be our miracle, and it hadn't survived. So my OB did, after that appointment, say that he was a bit concerned following the last ultrasound, but didn't want to worry me. I probably would have preferred to know that it wasn't looking good, but you know, I understand where he was coming from as well. So the baby was measuring 7 weeks 6 days, and I should have been 8 weeks 4 days. So literally 2 days after my previous ultrasound, the baby had stopped. The heartbeat had stopped. So it was tough. We had the D&C the next day on the Wednesday, the 16th of February, and it was a little bit different to my previous D&C. I took the same tablets as before to get my uterus to contract and start shedding, but because I was waiting so long in my hospital gown and in the bed, sorry, TMI, I did start to bleed, and so I asked the nurse for a pad because, you know, I was just waiting so long that it all started happening. So I was wheeled in eventually and given an anaesthetic, and put to sleep. And I felt a bit numb, to be honest, through the whole process. Not as emotional as the first time. I think it hit me later on, but the day of surgery I was quite numb about it all. But of course, miscarriage is just the most devastating thing to have to go through. And, you know, the minute you see those 2 lines and you find out you're pregnant, you have so many dreams of your future baby, and all of that is taken away from you in a second, and it's not easy. So I woke up from that D&C. Even the laparoscopy, I woke up not feeling sick. I didn't feel sick for the laparoscopy, and I didn't feel sick for this D&C, the most recent one. So that was a positive. I was given no antibiotics for both D&Cs. I think that's pretty common practice, even though you would have seen in my last video I have mixed feelings about it, and I just wish I had been given them, because we wouldn't be in this position, we wouldn't be in this situation if I had. And I know it's not common practice because it is such a low risk surgery, but I still don't get, and I don't think I ever will, if the risk's there, why wouldn't you eliminate the risk and give your patient antibiotics? But it's just the way things are done, and I just have to accept that that's our reality, and it's the situation we're in, unfortunately. After the D&C, we had to wait another 4 weeks before we could have our follow-up appointment. We decided to get the baby tested to see if there were any chromosomal abnormalities, and got those results 4 weeks after the D&C. Turns out it had triploid, which is, instead of having 2 sets of chromosomes, has 3 sets. Can't survive, rarely survive to a live birth. So I guess that was peace of mind that the miscarriage didn't have anything to do with me. I've had all the tests done on me and they all come back fine, so we're assuming the first miscarriage as well was due to chromosomal abnormalities, which is very common. 70% of all embryos created, whether they're naturally created or through IVF, are going to be abnormal. Becoming pregnant with a healthy baby is a miracle in itself. It really is. It's amazing how often it happens. From that point, we started documenting our journey, and I think that was one of our first videos, documenting that appointment with my OB to find out what was wrong with the baby, and that post-D&C appointment. It's very hard to fit so much information in a short video, so I hope I've said everything I've wanted to. When I go back and edit, there's probably a ton of things that I wish I'd added in. If that's the case, I'll probably insert them in writing. But if you've got any questions in regards to laparoscopy or D&Cs, please don't hesitate to ask me. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if I haven't covered them in this video. And I wish any of you who are about to go through a laparoscopy or a DNC, so much love and luck. Each procedure and each step is getting us one step closer to our miracle baby. That goes for everyone. You know, it's a process and it's a journey, but we are each day getting closer and closer to meeting our babies. I just always try and keep in mind that hopefully one day it'll all make sense. And we will realise when we're holding that little baby in our arms why things happened when they did. So, again, wishing you all so much luck. It's not a fun thing to go through all of these surgeries. Honestly, I think each surgery, the anaesthetic, I recover from better each surgery, so I think my body's probably getting used to it. It's a tough journey, but we're in it together, and this community has been incredible through our IVF journey. The support and love has been unbelievable and so moving. Tim and I are very grateful to have this community and to have met so many wonderful people, and we're there for you guys as well. We're wanting to give you as much support as you have for us. Take care of yourselves, and I'll be back to film another video soon. If you've got any suggestions on videos that you'd like me to do, let me know. Comment down below. Bye guys.